Hello, ladies and gentlemen, ConeDodger here, and welcome to part number 2 of the 2020 Dodge Viper build-off. Today we are going to look at 2 more cars and hand out a few more awards, and we are going to start out with Cool K's example of a 2020 Dodge Viper. This one is an interesting combination of a lot of, we'll say, classic Viper tendencies and some other influences. We gotta first start out, though, with the looks of the car, and that means that we need to rate this car based on its looks for the wow factor of a 10-year-old. Now, this was one that's based on my own personal experience, because the Viper was pretty new when I was 10, and they had a lot of wow factor to me, and I think many kids of my generation. This car, I think, is one of the cleaner and slicker examples of the Vipers that I have in the 10 cars. From inside the building here, it does still look like a very sleek car. It's not a very attention-grabby design, that's for sure. But then when you start to get a little closer to it, it has a certain menacing, very mean look to it, especially from the front. And in the back, it has a very slick and yet aggressive look. Like I said, overall, this car, I think, is one of the just cleanest and simplest designs that really works well together. It is one of the few examples to not feature the crosshair grille in the front, and yet it still manages to pull off the Viper look. But we're not really worried about that for right now. We're more concerned about the wow factor. In the wow factor, it does have very big lines, like it has the large nose, has the wide hips, it's got an aggressive look, but it doesn't have a lot of attention-grabby stuff to it. The diffuser in the back is certainly attention-grabby, and I think the subtle but significant wing in the back does grab some attention. The aggressive front end is what kind of saves, for being such a clean design, the aggressive nature of the headlights and the grille actually does bring some wow factor back into this. It's certainly not what I would call the most wow factor, but it does have some. The side vents, the aggressive front end, the diffuser in the back. So it's not going to be a low score, but it's not going to be a high score either. I'm going to say that this one's a 7. Actually, I'm going to mark it down to a 6. I'm going to mark it down to a 6 in wow factor. I'm thinking back to my design, and kind of similar here. It has the aggressiveness, but it doesn't have a lot of pop. It doesn't have a lot of, like, eye-grabbing, attention-seeking kind of stuff to it. Next up, we have to move into the Viper Legacy. Does this car look like a Viper? Does it look like it comes from the previous generations and is part of that family or not? This is probably one of the most difficult categories for this car, because it is in nature a unique design to the rest of the family. However, it does pull off a lot of the subtle characteristics of the previous Viper generations. I particularly like the taillight design, and it's kind of a throwback to the first couple generations and the current generation. It kind of merges a lot of those designs together and manages to pull off its own look there. The front end is very unique, again, not having any crosshair grille, and a headline arrangement that is somewhat unique to the rest of the family lineup. However, it has the same kind of menacing look of the current generation, just in a different shape, and it really does. The front looks very Fang-y, so that does save the heritage part, the legacy, a little bit, as well as these angled side vents that they're presented differently than previous generation Vipers, but they are there, and they do bring us back a little bit. Overall, it could definitely have used some more themes from previous generations to do well in this category. There's some little details it could have to really nail this requirement, if you will. The wheels were a good choice. That does help the overall design. So although it does have some things that bring us back and make it look Viper, I think if this car was just out on the streets and out on its own, and you saw it, Viper isn't where you would go. I think it would probably line more up to something like a European sports car or an Italian sports car. It's got the like the big shouldered look, but it just doesn't have the Viper kind of style to it. So I'm only going to give it a 2 in Legacy. The other important factor, though, is timelessness. And this kind of is a category that has less to do with the Viper appearance, which is good for this car, because this is a stunning design. Even if it's not particularly Viper, when I first saw the car, I really, really liked the look. It's very nicely designed. I imagine the fangs on the front are accidental, but they're actually pretty cool. I'm sure they are accidental. The grille is a nice arrangement. It's a very simple, clean design, but boy does it work. It just really works as a design. I don't think it's going to age poorly. It's not as striking, which is why it doesn't have a lot of wow. It's not as Viper, so doesn't have as good legacy. But I think this is a design that I could see being timeless. It kind of gives me the vibes of your DB9s and kind of the second gen GTS Viper, where this look will still be relevant and still look as good 10, 15, 20 years from now as it does now. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 in timelessness, which is, I think, a really big nod to the overall design, especially for how basically simple it is. So, not a lot of fixtures, but very well used fixtures. Next up we have, of course, the drivetrain. So, what does this car have underneath of it? Sure, it looks like a big, fast, and I would say expensive and supreme sports car. But what's underneath of it? Is it a Viper V10? Not exactly. This is our first Viper V8 concept. So this one is using a 90-degree V8 of 4.8 liters. It is dual overhead cam. It is also turbocharged, direct injected. It is all-wheel drive. It is a sequential gearbox. It is an aluminum chassis and body. Everything about the build of this car is a high-end, supreme sports car, or almost exotic. It actually gives me GTR vibes, more so than it gives me Viper vibes underneath. And that is legitimate. That is a legitimate thing that I could definitely see happening with the Viper. One of the things I thought about when I started this is, you know, what could happen with it to save the Viper from going extinct. And one of the things that I considered is, you know, maybe it's time that they stop trying to be this strange muscle car exotic that the Viper has always been. That's kind of been my description. Some people, Les Gibbs, doesn't like that description because, you know, muscle cars are supposed to be four-seater, big, you know, touring kind of cars. But you know what I mean. The Viper is its own special, strange beast. But what if, instead, Fiat, Chrysler, Hyundai, whoever is the majority stake owner of this by the time that this actually happened, let's say they wanted to fight the big boys. Let's say they wanted to be the GTR. Let's say they wanted to fight the McLarens or the 911s, things of that nature. That is where this build takes place. So the drivetrain plausibility, I think if I just read off all of what I said there and put it at face value, probably you would say it's a low score. It's not a very plausible scenario for the car. This is a very uniquely built car. Honestly, it would probably be built on something from a different manufacturer's platform. I wouldn't see Chrysler building themselves an all-wheel drive, you know, sports car platform. However, it could be done. It could move to another car's platform. Alfa has been working their magic with the super sports cars and the exotics and stuff like that, so it's not improbable that it could do something like this, but it's not quite as probable, I would say. It's definitely out there. So I'm gonna say, because it would be a huge undertaking, I'm gonna say it's only a 4 on the plausibility, but in creativity, how does it do there? Outright, I mean, if it were any other car, or if it was any other manufacturer making this style of car, twin turbo V8 with a 7-speed sequential, we'll say it's probably actually a dual clutch, with twin turbos on a V8, not completely unique, but not very common. I think the only thing that would have been more common than this would have been a V6 twin turbo all-wheel drive setup. Then it would have been very GTR-like. So it does have some uniqueness there, and it does still kind of present itself in a muscle car way. So it's just a very different approach to kind of the same result. Creativity-wise, I'm going to say it's a 7 on creativity-wise, which is pretty good. It could have been better, though, I think, if maybe it had used some kind of existing technology to better emphasize the old-school Viper mentality. So, if the updated engine package here and the updated underpinnings could have been used, but kind of retained some of the scariness, I think that would have been better marks in creativity. There are some tests this car would have done very well with that didn't happen to be part of our contest here. Actual drivability, drive around town ability, manners, this car does all of those very well. What it doesn't do a great job of, though, is being a Viper. Because this is the stuff of supercars. This is the stuff of your finest German or Italian or Japanese supercars. That is the least Darwin car you could probably make. This is with ESC off, and it is ultimately really hard to screw up on this thing. This is a brilliantly designed car that, in this contest, happens to be a drawback. So the Darwin check, I think this is actually going to be one of our only low-scoring examples. We'll have to see. This is only the third car I've tested, but I don't know how many other all-wheel drive competitors there are, or as expertly crafted competitors. I'm actually going to give this car a 2 because of one factor, and I was trying to demonstrate it for you there, and that is, this thing is amazingly fast, but you can run out of brakes way too fast. Like, the amount of speed you can gather in this car is unreal, and then the brakes will go away long before you've slowed down from what you managed to do. So, a little bit of a bump there in the Darwin check. Yeah, that's full on the brakes, and please slow down. Yeah, definitely gives you a little Darwin check there. Next up, I think, is going to be this car's absolute best, and that is the handling track. I'm a little bit worried about the brakes, but I'm hoping the slow speeds here are going to help this thing really excel. Oh, buddy, it's already lightning fast. It does have a little bit of understeer, but it actually remains very safe. Oh man, the brakes. Oh, the brakes are going to be a huge drawback to this. Bit disappointing, because handling-wise and performance-wise, this car could really be something here. I think this is actually a pretty heavy car, thanks to the all-wheel drive system, thanks to the twin-turbo V8. So it does have some drawbacks there. If I'm generous enough with the brakes, I just gotta back those braking zones up a bit. It's certainly... Ooh! That was spooky, actually. I think it's just so... It gets out of turn so well that you gain way more speed than you're ready for. However, it's just very planted, very direct. I can definitely point it around here very well. It's, despite the brake issue, still the car I feel most comfortable with around here. You just gotta be a little easy with the brakes. And it catches some major air over the hump. I'm having to give it a lot of wheel. Let's try and turn ESC off. I don't think it's doing a whole heck of a lot here, so it's probably not going to affect us too much. And it's a sneaky fast car. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't draw itself a lot of attention. And then you look down, and all of a sudden you're doing 100 miles an hour into a turn you should be doing, 34. So definitely sneaky fast. Very sneaky. It's better with ESC off because it's giving me the ability to really kind of point it around. It could probably use a little bit more rear power bias. I'm getting a bit of understeer on throttle when I would love to be able to point this thing around with the throttle a bit. Again, really gives me a GTR vibe. But despite the fact that brakes have been fading and have some issues, you can see I've really already gotten this thing dialed in, feeling comfortable dragging tires into the dirt when necessary. So, unfortunately, I think sans the brakes. Sans the brakes, this would have been a perfect. Because it is a ton of fun around the handling circuit, as I suspected it might be. Gosh, I really wanted it to break free there, and it just wouldn't do it. Just barely. Oh, now we're too fast. Hard on the brake. Yeah, you can see I'm struggling now because they can't shed that heat out of the brakes. You gotta use a lot of brakes with this car because it is seemingly pretty heavy. I could look over and see. It is 3,600. Actually, that's not as heavy as I expected. It definitely drives like a car that's heavier than that. Alright, well, I'm going to say that it's a 4 on the handling course because it's a car you can drive around the handling course, which is something we've not been able to say around this handling course for a lot of our competitors. The brakes could have helped it have a 5. Now we're going to take it to the big track and see if, with enough distance for the brakes to cool, will it be able to do the big track. This is not something I really show with many cars, but this one has a certain tendency on the big track that I think is worth showing, and that is its ability to get out of the hole. That is very fast. On the big track, the handling is superb. Easily one of the most drivable cars. It does definitely tend to the understeer side, which is not particularly Viper-ish. But again, this was a car that maybe changes the Viper's mentality a bit. Maybe it changes the reputation even. That was fun. It let me kind of do a bit of slide there. See, I don't even feel the need to have ESC on at all here. Alright, let's see what kind of top speed we're going to get down here. Should be pretty quick. Ultimately, it's a reasonable build, though. The power levels are within reason. Alright, let's slow down because I'm feeling we're going to need to. Yep. But, again, within reason and very drivable. Let's brake early. So, yeah, brakes were not quite there. But boy, is it drivable. I almost want to go out and make sure this thing is indeed on street tires. Oh, we actually cooked the brakes off there. I think we saw smoke. That's too bad. easily fixed, obviously, but we got what we got, and what we have is a car that drives really, really well, is a lot of fun, despite those issues. So I'm not gonna judge it too hard, thanks to the brakes, but it's certainly not going to be perfect either. The fact that it does things like that, big marks. Big marks. But then 1200 degrees in the brakes. So I think we're gonna have to go for a 3 on trackability here. Easily could have been a 5, I think, with a little bit more tuning and better brakes, but it's ultimately a car I can tell would be a lot of fun on the track with those things taken care of. Alright, and last but not least, can this car get Cars and Coffee shut down? I think this one's going to take a little creativity. There's more than one way to get Cars and Coffee shut down, though, so we'll see what we can do. I don't think the full throttle and then drop it in first thing is really going to do it for us. Yeah. We're just going to accelerate on out of there. We might hop a curb, and we might make a fool of ourselves. But ultimately, it doesn't have the great shut it down kind of atmosphere. This car, like I said, is designed and engineered very well, and it does a lot of things to not let you do stupid things, but it does a very fine donut and can get out of control. So it's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a stretch. I'm gonna say, honestly, it's not the best at getting Cars and Coffee shut down. It can let you do really dumb things, but it really is a pretty safe car to drive. So only a 2 in getting Cars and Coffee shut down. I'm real sorry, but it's just something a Viper needs to be able to do. And that is Cool K's example. Might not be the absolute best Viper, but it is a very finely built car. Very, very well built car and well designed. The most niche award goes to Asami, who decided that the Viper just wasn't in a small enough market group, so it should also be a shooting brake wagon, because yes, that's the market that has the most buyers out there. Really good job, though, of getting Viper looks into that. It's pretty neat looking at the end of the day. The Best Humps Award to Limejet, who took the roof humps and made them into roof spoilers. I gotta say, this one was actually really, really close to making it into the final 10 as well. Next up, we have Hint Boy Wright's example of a 2020 Dodge Viper. This one visually is an interesting one. It's got a very striking design. It is red. I think that's our first red example, and definitely pulls off of previous generation Viper or looks. Let's get in here closer and see about our 10-year-old wow factor. From a distance, it does have some visual pull, and then once you get close, it really does have a lot of very attention-grabbing features. The back has a lot of interest in it. I'm not, at this juncture, going to make a judgment on the rear design, but it certainly does have a lot of interesting features. The vents over the tires, the rear panel, the light design is very cool. There's a lot of tail light design, including that very cool design. The front, also with a lot of designs in it. Very cool look and attention getting. The sides, the side profile has some of the curves and over-exaggerated features. The side pipes, dual side pipes on either side. The very large vents in the back. This car has quite a bit of 10-year-old wow factor appeal. Maybe I'm trying to find places where this one struggles with that, and maybe only in the fact that it's not wholly undifferent from the previous generations, but the front LED system, you know, these small strips of lights making up the front headlights, and the overall use of lights kind of save it from that. So, despite it not being dramatically different, I think I'm still going to give it very high marks in WoW. Maybe not the most WoW factor, but at least a 9. Continuing with the looks, how about the Viper Legacy? Some really key components here. The Viper taillight, that was very, very expertly crafted there. The rear panel, that's a Viper, Legacy thing. The taillights, even though they are a unique design, maintain a very similar design to the previous generations. The front has the crosshair grille and the overall light design that it really does scream Viper. You got the side pipes, you got the side vents, you got the bumps in the roof. I mean, all around the openings in the hood. This thing, it's a Viper through and through. It really is. So this one's, for me, a very easy 5 out of 5 in the Legacy. There's just all of the right things here. So huge, really huge marks on that one. Very well done. The timelessness of it, though, that's a bit tougher for me to call. It's certainly very modern looking and has a sharp, aggressive look, somewhat similar to the current generation Viper, but, you know, definitely modernized. I just don't know that it looks as elegant, you know? There's a lot of wow in it, you know, it has a lot of that, and has a lot of appeal there, but I just don't know that this design would age quite as gracefully. In many ways, it looks popped up, you know, it looks accessorized almost, and cars like that, they might look good on the showroom floor at the moment, but years down the road, sometimes they don't age quite as well. The legacy of it does kind of save it here, though. The front and the overall profile of the car is it's very Viper, and it's iconic in shape, and iconic does help in timelessness, but I don't know if it completely saves it. Also, I gotta admit, I'm not the biggest fan of the back end. I don't know if it's aging well to me at the moment, so I really don't know how that's going to age over time. Yeah, maybe a little bit more tweaking needed to happen there. I'm sure the wing thing is accidental. That seems to be something happening with the grills, but it is actually pretty cool looking. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go for a 2 on timelessness on this one. Alright, next up we need to look at the drivetrain and the drivetrain plausibility and creativity. I'm going to have to speak up because this car is very loud and very fast. So this is one of the examples that came with quite a bit of email description. I didn't require that, nor did I really hint that you should, but some people did and some people didn't, and because of that I just kind of breezed through those. I didn't really study them in detail, but what I was picking up on this design was it is meant to be a Viper V10, so it's an 8.3 liter V10. It is brought up to modern terms with direct injection and dual overhead cam. However, it's also meant to have hybrid motors to help make it even faster, so used the quality points to replicate the power that would be added by electric motors. How realistic is that? How realistic to use the existing Viper V10, modernize it just a bit, and add electric motors? Something that I think is plausible, but I would actually call it unlikely, because it's going to make it so ridiculously expensive. Viper was already an expensive car to make. They were breaching the $100,000 mark. To modernize the Viper V10 and then add a hybrid system is going to be extravagantly expensive. I would find it much more likely that if they were going to go the hybrid route, they would probably use something out of the family of engines already in existence, something that they could kind of plug and play, because engineering a brand new V10, basically, you know, modernizing the old 8.3 liter to a new modernized Viper V10 and adding a hybrid systems engine combination, definitely going to be a daunting task. For the plausibility, I'm actually going to give this a 3. I just don't know that that is a super plausible scenario. However, it is a creative solution. So many of us want to see the Viper V10 live. That is something that I've picked up on. It kind of surprised me. Maybe it's just because when you think Viper, you think V10 car. You think V10 rear-wheel drive sports car. And to get away from that kind of feels like a shame. So people did creative things to try and save the engine. And thinking of using, you know, modern hybrid systems is a cool idea. It's creative, and it would move the Viper into another category of car. We would be talking 900 to 1,000 horsepower in a Viper off the showroom floor, and that's next level. I know the horsepower wars are real, and we keep climbing higher and higher with that, but 1,000 horsepower, 900 horsepower in a showroom car that's exotic territory. You know, this would be a drivetrain to bring the Viper to a whole different level. So it's creative. It's very creative, not very plausible. I'm going to actually give it a 7 on creativity, only because of the use of the standard Viper kind of loadout. I think, like I said, there could have been maybe some family sharing to bring this to reality. Maybe a little bit more of a creative solution to figure out how to make it possible. So plausibility and creativity maybe do actually share some tendencies, but still a pretty cool idea. I just noticed that there's an interesting part of this design, and that is that there are so many lights that it makes my game frames basically freeze whenever they're visible. So, extremely creative use of lights. I had no idea there was so many in there. There is so many individual light fixtures in here that... Here, hold on. Let's Control F. We're at 50-ish. Lights on. 20, 18, 17. So, that's a lot of fixtures. Alright, due to the theme of the car, and the fact that it's supposed to be rear-wheel drive, but electric drive front wheels most likely, it is an all-wheel drive representation, which leads me to believe it's not going to have very high marks in the Darwin category, but we will see. This is an extremely, insanely powerful car, so maybe it has enough power to break free if you do something silly. But not quite. It is extremely planted and diabolically fast. Does it, though, have the brakes to slow down? It has a lot of brakes, and it apparently has a strong enough engine that it can handle going from, like, 5th to 2nd or something like that. So that's... I mean, unfortunately, this is really a compliment to the car, but it is not Darwinistic at all. This thing is incredibly smart. It knows how to deal with a driver that maybe isn't as smart as the car. Yeah, I mean, even doing really stupid things at speed, it deals with it flawlessly. And has plenty of brakes. So, it's going to be a 1. It is just not a Darwinistic car. And that's fine. Maybe it'll overcome that with how it does on the track. On the handling course, this is a car that I am going to have some restraint with. What's nice is this car has a linear power band, and it makes most of its power up top. So you can actually drive this thing around on the handling course in 2nd gear. It has plenty of power down low, but not so much that it gets carried away. The ESC is able to hold it on the track very well. All-wheel drive, able to put the power down. Plenty of air there. The brakes got overcome there, interestingly. I think mostly because it was airborne. I think what happened there is I locked the brakes in the air, and then I think the ABS didn't know what to do. I kind of want to test that again, because the brakes seemed fine everywhere else. Yeah, you can hear the SE is working, which is interesting for a rear-wheel drive, or sorry, an all-wheel drive car, but I think this actually has mostly rear-wheel drive to represent, you know, the small amount of power the electric motors would put to the front wheels. Yeah, it definitely handles like a car that's significantly rear biased in drive. We might try it without the SE on. I kind of want to test again, though, the brakes over the jump. It's not actually that relevant to the car, but I just am curious. It has a lot more understeer than I was expecting, to be honest. Move my view a bit here. There we go. It's not undrivable, and like I said, second gear lets the car be pretty planted. Feels just a little cumbersome, you know, it doesn't feel nimble at all. Alright, let's try this again. Okay, there it is. It was fine. So I think I just long jumped a little too far there, and I hit the brakes when I was still in the air, and the brakes didn't quite understand what to do with that. Other than that, it seems to have plenty of brakes and plenty of brake cooling. It's fun, but I don't think it's the most fun you can have on this track. I think it's going to be a lot better on the big track. So I'm going to go for a 4 here. Let me turn the ESC off real quick, though, and see if it maybe springs to life. It's going to let me do even dumber things. The power band does really save this thing, having, you know, the lower power at the low end of the rev range. Ooh! Yeah, like I said, it lets me do stupid things, and that was one of them. Let's see if it gets sideways at all. Because this is handling track fun. It doesn't have to be fast if it is a lot of fun to drive around. But an all-wheel drive car like this is more likely to have fun by going fast. Yeah, it doesn't really want to kick out at all. It's kind of just here to go fast. Oh, yep, that's the case. If you hit the brakes while you're in the air, by wheel, the brakes stop working. Today I learned. So now it's time to go out onto the big course and see how we do with the full track at our disposal. I did forget to mention that this is a regular manual car, but I'm sure you could tell that by now. Which did give it a little bit of points in the drivetrain creativity, because a hybrid-powered car with a rail manual would definitely be very interesting. Ooh! Ooh! Alright, yeah, it's certainly got some rear-wheel driveness to it. Hello, Thunderstorm. Oh no, I better speed this up before the power goes out. Let's hit the track. Let's go. Luckily this car is real fast, so we'll have no problems getting up to speed. Wondering if I should put ESC back on. I thought this car would be more fun without it. Big marks on the way it does let you move around a little bit. Oh, it is actually a little bit long in the brakes. I think they stay cool, but it just needs a little bit more braking power, maybe. Or maybe it doesn't have the tire grip to get the brakes stuck to the road, and ABS is having to act too much. Yeah, I'm really having to brake early. Lots of grip out of the turns, like, that's insane. Oh, sorry about your third gear. Very sorry about it. Just a prototype, right? Revs way out. I think that's one of our fastest. I got greedy. Smack the wall. I got greedy, but it was so worth it. That was insanely fast. Don't worry. Just because your car happens to be under my feet when I crash it, doesn't generally mean I'm taking points away. A lot of the times, if the car is able to get away from me like that, but if it does it in a way that's reasonable and feels sensible, that's actually a good thing. Ooh. Yeah, I do like that it is able to hang the back out a little bit. What I don't like is the nature of it to want to understeer at the limits. So basically, what I'm getting is a car that, I don't know why it keeps defaulting to looking left, is a car that, when you push it in the middle of the turn, it wants to understeer. When you push it on exit, it wants to oversteer. And when you enter the turns, it's a little underbraked and tends to make you want to understeer. It's just a kind of a frustrating combination of things to deal with. It'd almost be better if it was just one way or the other. I do think the brakes, again, would be something that could really turn this car around. See that? Did you see how I lifted the nose there and really understeered? That's a very frustrating experience. Yeah, the harder I push it, the more I drive it, the more understeer I'm getting out of it. It's saved by the fact that it gets out of the turn very well. And with weight transfer, it does seem to have some oversteer in it. But I'm definitely having a hard time keeping it under control. Try and be a little bit more sensible this time. Lift through slingshot. Dancing through there, much better. We'll brake at the 250 because we're going fast and I do feel like we don't have quite enough brakes. Yeah, when the brakes are working, it does dance around quite nicely. And when you slow down enough, it does have a nice balance. So it's saving itself a bit there. But just not enough brakes. If I have to brake at the very first mark there, that's not a good sign. We are gonna go for no, it's the understeer is just a little too frustrating on exit, and the combination with the brakes, I think I'm actually gonna go for a 3. Sorry, I bamboozled you. A 3 on trackability. I really thought this one would be better on the big track than it is. But it is still quite a bit of fun. I just looked over and noticed this car weighs 4,100 pounds, which is very realistic for the theme, since it's supposed to be a hybrid combination V10. So it's going to be very heavy with the recharge systems, the batteries, and all of that stuff. Explains a lot of the tendencies I was just feeling on track there. And I'm actually going to, after the fact, I'm going to bump the creativity score up 1 on the drivetrain, because that's great attention to detail on your theme. You knew what you were going for, and you actually purposely hurt your car's performance to make sure you matched your theme, and that gives you a good nod there. So an extra point there, even though we just lost a point on the big track. And the last thing before my power goes out is to see if this thing can do the Cars and Coffee shutdown maneuver. It's gonna be another interesting one since it's all-wheel drive, but this car does have more rear bias. Oh, I forgot about the taillights. Freaking my game out. Alright, let's, my camera wasn't where I wanted it there. Hold on. Everybody's laughing at me. I just stalled after doing a skid in the parking lot. The camera is really offset with this body for some reason. Everything's a little skewed. Alright, let's see here. It does get away from you. Much more than the other all-wheel drive car. Hello, Thunder. Much more than the other all-wheel drive car, but still not as much as a rear-wheel drive car. So, gosh, it has so much grip. It's so fast off the line. It's only going to get a 2 on killing cars and coffee. It's just too safe of a car. Alright, that will do it for today's reviews, and that does it for Hint Boy Wright's example. I had to look over and remember. Nice design, very Viper-like. I like your theme, I like your commitment to your theme, and I think the scores reflect that, and yeah, it was fun to drive. That's 4 down, 6 to go, and we've already had quite a few interesting examples. Can't wait to look through more of them, and we will do that tomorrow. Thanks for watching. I think that'll buff out.